So in this movie, we're going to look at how we can address this photograph here. There's a couple of different issues that are happening here. We have underexposure and we have uh, highlights that are represented in the sky, yet if we adjust this image, we're going to find that we might lose certain parts of the image and retain other parts of the image or enhance other parts of the image. So let's try that. We'll begin by dragging our background layer to the new layer icon and renaming it corrections, just like we did before. And then we go up to the image pull down menu and then adjustments and then brightness contrast. And let's just try to fix this image. So if we notice, what happens here is that as we pull the brightness value up to a point that makes the subject look good, we're losing a lot of the background as a result of that. So we can do a little bit here in terms of correcting this, and contrast is not going to improve this image all that much in this case. So we're going to hit OK and make that adjustment. Let's go back to image adjustments and then shadows highlights. So when we do that, we can see that the image at 35% shadow adjustment is doing a good job here, but there's something that looks kind of wrong with the transitions from the shadows to the highlight areas. So we're going to have to address this in a way with this dialog box, but we're going to have to get a little bit more advanced. So let's take a look here and see if we do pull out our highlights, that improves things, but the transition between those two are still giving us a little bit of an issue. We've improved the photograph a great deal already, but let's just add a little bit more to this image to make it pop, because it's looking a little dull. So let's do show more icons, show more options here, and don't get intimidated by the extra sliders that are coming up here. What this is really trying to do is help with the tonal transitions between the highlights and the shadows in the photograph. And you don't want your photo to look dull, and you don't want your transitions to look fake. So this really helps with that. So just to kind of over accentuate what happens here, I'm going to put this amount all the way up and then turn this back and forth, and you can see how this tone is really coming in and it's affecting our image. Also, the radius will help with those transitions between tones. So there's a lot in our arsenal here to make this image look better. We've made it look worse, but let's just dial this back so that we can adjust this accordingly. So here we'll go and brighten the shadows of this image to a point. We'll also change the overall tone. So we want that shadowed area to be kind of like a mid-tone. And so that's looking pretty good. And then next we'll just adjust the radius. Here the radius at 0 doesn't really pop. We want the image to pop a little bit more than that, so we'll bring our radius up. Here, when it's so large, the effect doesn't really show. So let's just find a balance between that. Next, we'll do our highlights. And so here we can see that the highlights could use a little bit of a tone down. So we're going to darken them just slightly and then come in with our our tone value and then just manipulate the radius slightly. It's just adaptive. You're manipulating the sliders and then you're just seeing what is better or what is worse. Now let's take a look at these color and mid-tone adjustments here. So if we're at 0 with our color, you can see that a lot of color can be added to this photograph, but we need to find a place that gives us some believability. Also, when you're doing these sliders, it takes a lot of the color saturation and contrast out. So this is just putting it back in this case. And then also here is the midtones in our image. So then we can kind of affect that as well. Now we're at a really good place here. We've gone from this to this in this photograph, and I think we've improved and brought out a lot more information. And this story, the story of the photograph is really coming to life now. We'll hit OK, and then that'll be our overall adjustment. Here's the before, and then here's the after. Pay close attention to the sky and see how we've preserved those details in the sky as well.